That was probably the most attention the motel got. And he said that the property was not eligible for listing. Then in 2012, Motley et al. Created a study that really looked at, excuse me, all of the Route 66 motels um, in Arizona. So it was a broader study. They did um, recommend the Crown Motel as individually eligible. And then at the request of Flagstaff Shelter Services, I began an effort in 2023 to potentially get some state grant funding to restore the motel. And that was a partially paid, partially volunteer effort on my part. And the result was interactions with Dr. Collins from SHPO and other folks there that determined that the Crown was eligible at that time for the National Register. Here's a figure showing the APE, the lot that the motel is on. I think you're all pretty familiar with that, so I'm going to go kind of fast through these slides as they're also in the report. This is the 2021 photos of the motel and the really cool postcards, one from 1963 and one from around 1967. I think most notably here, the difference, as you can see, and obviously the period of significance ends in 1968. So right after the lower postcard was created was the end of period of significance, which is when Route I-40 bypassed Flagstaff. And right here, you can see that the restaurant building was created sometime between 63 and 67. And I think it's really interesting that the pillars for the sign are incorporated into the restaurant. And they must have made the roof of the restaurant that height on purpose to be underneath the sign. At that time, you can see over here on the right of the bottom postcard that this addition was created to building one. And then here's the 67 postcard and 2025 photo. And you can see that obviously the Crown Motel sign is gone, the restaurant signs are gone. We have the addition here on the 2025 photo. You can see, but there's another addition that I'll zoom in on in a minute that I think was a little bit later. And obviously, building two over here was created outside of the period of significance. A lot of major impacts happened after the period of significance ended in 68. In 1988, building two was constructed and the one-story storage room on the end added to the end cap of building one. I think somewhere around 1992, the Crown Motel sign was removed and the oversized porte cochere was added when it became a Howard Johnson's, and feel free to correct my pronunciation of porte cochere. 1996, awnings were added during the restaurant remodel when it became the Crown Railroad Cafe. 2007, the managers and owners of the Crown Railroad Cafe changed the neon around the trim of the building from green to red, and then 2004, 2024, the restaurant signs, neon, and porte cochere were removed. In addition, things that aren't as securely dated were the addition of new steel doors, and I'm not exactly positive those are not original, but I think they're not original. The exterior lighting on building one was removed. The swimming pool was added probably in 1988, along with building two. And changes to decorative elements like the handrails, stairwells, and light fixtures, which actually had a pretty significant effect on materials and design and workmanship and things like that on the integrity of the building. So here's building one, modern-ish photo of probably 2023 1963-ish, I'm guessing this aerial sometime around there. And here is building one here, so you can kind of see how it steps up to the north as the property slopes up. Here's the 1967 edition on the end cap here, and then this little storage room, I believe, was probably added in 1988. Here's the porte cochere that was added around 92, and you can see there is this small bit of the original porte cochere potentially still existing. Looks like maybe it was cut off and no pillows were added, or maybe it was just taken out completely when that was put on. I'm not exactly sure. And then in modern times, it's the whole porte cochere has been removed. But as you can see, this one that was added in 92 was significantly deterring from the look of the rest of the motel and does not fit in architecturally with anything else about the hotel, except for maybe the columns. Building 2, added outside of the period of significance. And here's a shot to the north showing the swimming pool. And the Crown Motel, the Crown Restaurant, sorry, building. And this is a shot of the front here. This train mural was added around 2007 when they redid the restaurant signs, the neon in the signs. And a young sign company who's still in Flagstaff and is one of the oldest neon sign companies in existence, as far as I can tell, in the US, redid that and changed the lighting that used to be around the edges like this, where my pointer is. They changed that from green to red at the same time that they redid the neon in the restaurant sign and added that mural, which I believe is going to be taken off. Hopefully find a home for it. And here's just a couple ads out of the newspaper. The archival research for this property was interesting as it is for all these motels. It's really hard to find much of anything about the actual hotel or the owners. The Don and Evie Richardson, who created the hotel, I didn't find much about them at all. But I thought it'd be cool to show these. This is the only photo in the newspaper of the restaurant and the motel sign. And then just as a reminder that you could get fish sticks on Friday for $1.10 per person in 1968. And although it's outside of the period of significance, I thought it was really neat story about John Cavolo. I interviewed one of his daughters, Elizabeth Cavolo, who provided the photos here. And this is how I remember the cafe. And I remember John being there. This is exactly what it looked like for many years. And he was really into the trains and just did such a great job continuing the tradition of this cafe on Route 66, I thought. So I thought I want to put a couple slides in there. And this is definitely a significant property. Motels can be considered significant under National Criterion A in the area of transportation and commerce if they show a clear association with and convey a feeling of personal and commercial traffic along Route 66. They must be located near or accessible from Route 66 and must retain their appearance from the historic period of significance. So it doesn't exactly retain its appearance, but I still believe it is significant. I'm going to run through the integrity real quick here. Location, it's still in its same location. Because of all the changes that I listed earlier, the design, the aspect, integrity of design has been lost. The setting has been diminished. Route 66 is now configured with 4 lanes plus a turning lane. However, it still runs in front of the buildings and functions in relation to the subject property, much the way it did during the period of significance, and so does the railroad, although there is that berm in between the railroad and Route 66. And interestingly, John Cavolo was on the city council when that was approved. The materials and workmanship have been lost because the exterior alterations that have had the most negative effect on these aspects are the removal of the porte cochere, the removal of the neon and the restaurant signs, and the removal of the Crown Motel sign. The feeling is weak. I think people that stayed there would still recognize it, but it looks quite different today. And for me, all those things kind of culminate into the aspect of association, which has been lost. The Crown Restaurant building itself provides much of the architectural interest of the building complex, and it fronts Route 66. So that makes any changes to that building much more of an impact than they would be to the back buildings. Even the addition of Building 2, for me, didn't make it lose integrity completely. I think it still had quite a bit of the feeling and everything with the restaurant signs and the neon. And for over 50 years, that neon and the restaurant signs were beacons to travelers on Route 66. And I wax romantically about this in the report a little bit because I think that was really cool. I'm a little tied up in this property. I think it was a neat property. However, the cumulative impact of the changes that occurred outside the period of significance have resulted in a different property than existed during the mid 20th century. And the former Crown Motel no longer expresses its association with its original context and period of use. So even with all the prior alterations throughout the years, the restaurant signs and the neon still defined the property geographically. And this is an incredibly significant historical stretch of Route 66 with the bowling alley, museum club, and even the next door building to the west is still quite reminiscent of mid 20th century. And all that little stretch right there is such a neat area. I think it's one of the most intact stretches of Route 66 in Flagstaff. However, we recommend that the cumulative impact of changes outside of the period of significance makes this property no longer express its significance within its historic context. As a result of the study, the subject property is recommended as not eligible at the state and national level. And I know you guys have already looked at this item before and talked about potential additional mitigation, including replacement of the restaurant signs. And then we've also discussed with the property owner and the renter in the restaurant and the city staff about creating a mural depicting the Crown Restaurant as it appeared on the 1967 postcard, as I've tried to kind of frame here. So I'm going to leave that to discussion. And if anyone has any questions about the presentation, I can go back and just let me know.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Josh. First, thanks of all for that really well-written cultural resource study. I appreciated that. Thank you. My question was, in the determination of eligibility from 2023, were the significance criteria that you touched on what the SHPO concurred on, and what aspects of integrity were still intact at that time?
Say we didn't analyze it exactly that thoroughly. I communicated with Susan Lawson there a lot, and for the purposes, I think the purpose of that was to see if we could get them to say that it was eligible to make that determination so that they could get the state funding. So at that time, it was really borderline. I think it could have gone either way, given all the changes and everything to the property, especially the Crown Motel sign. So I'm not sure if I answered your question there.
I think.
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
Okay, and I was gonna just add, yeah, it's the neon and also the porte cochere that really were the changes between then to now.
Yes.
Isn't the Port Cochet the Howard Johnson's era, which is beyond the period of significance? So why is that important?
Part of it was, and farther back in the presentation, yeah, there was the original one entry and then the larger one built on top, and they were both removed. There, yeah, the 2014. So
it
still,
might be wishful thinking, Duffy, that there was part of the original port cochere here. And when Mark and I visited the property, we were thinking, or I think probably he was probably thinking more than I was, that there was part of the original there still. I don't really know that there was. When I look at the postcards, it looks like this port cochere here extends a little farther than the other one. So I think they may have taken a bit off, but it's really hard to tell.
I have a question. Has the city or have you been in communication with the SHPO, and has the SHPO concurred with finding of ineligibility?
I have been in communication with Susan Lawson at SHPO, and she just kind of really followed up with me to see whatever happened with the project. And I just kind of informed her about what happened and told her that I was going to make this recommendation, and she just said that's unfortunate. We didn't request concurrence.
Thank you.
So the point of this discussion here in White Spring brought to us, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to determine what mitigation we want for the loss of integrity. And then if we agree on that, to approve the cultural study report. But if we don't agree on the mitigation, we would defer the approval of the cultural study report until a later.
right, yeah,
Okay.
all one packaged motion. So it would be, yeah, accepting the phase 1 cultural resource study and its findings. And because essentially we've determined that if the study is accepted, that there was a major impact, due to this removal, it constituted a major impact requiring mitigation, under our code. And so then, and one of the things that we ask with a phase 1 study is if there's going to be major impacts to propose mitigation measures. So then that is the, if there are no additional questions about the reports or findings, which it seems like I'm reading that everyone is okay with the first step. I think the major discussion now is the mitigation. So, and yeah, Josh is flipping back to the final slide. So that is and I can pull it up if that's helpful. The replacement signage that you reviewed, I believe in the January or February meeting. And that was included in the agenda packet again for discussion, as well as the mural depicting the 1967 postcard that Josh just described.
All right, so why don't we just start with the restaurant sign if people have comments and questions on that, and then we can move on to the mural, and then we can see if there are other mitigations we would like to propose or that have been bandied about.
And I'll go ahead and pull up.
Yeah, questions or comments about the sign as mitigation?
I want to repeat my comment from our previous meeting that I really don't want to see the tenant's name included on that. Partly they may not be there long term, and I don't think they should get to put their name up there after they took down the historic signs.
Yeah, and I agree. If this is being proposed as mitigation, the name is not part of the mitigation. It's not like it originally was a Los Tapatios restaurant. Yeah.
I also
Elizabeth?
agree with that. I would like not to see their name up there. I mean, literally taking that sign down has now caused an adverse effect on that property, making it no longer eligible. It was the most damaging thing that had happened. So I don't think they should be able to put their name on that in the same way that the restaurant sign had been.
I can agree with that. I understand we're all obviously very bummed about what has happened to this property, but where would their name go? Because there's still a restaurant. People still have to know what restaurant there are and, or, you know, what restaurant it is. So then I guess that poses the question of where would they put their name?
I was thinking the same thing, Abby. I'm kind of struggling with, I agree that maybe it's not absolutely appropriate to have, because they were the ones that took down the sign, to have their name up there, but they are opening a business. Where would the name of the restaurant go?
In the same place it went when it was the Railroad Cafe. I mean, it doesn't say Railroad Cafe Restaurant. I think it looks
Yeah.
like it was on the side of the building, the awning. There's
It's
like
on
that.
the awning.
Yeah, there's the entire, I don't know, were they proposing to take down the awnings? Is that part of it?
Not at this.
Okay, there's a big spot where like the train mural goes, the windows. I think there's a lot of other places, and as Commissioner Horn pointed out, it's not always going to be a Tapatios restaurant. Well,
I think
sorry, it might not always be. I hope your
For
business
100
is successful. It's delicious.
but maybe not for 100 years.
Commissioner Haywood, did you have a?
I was going to say what you had said, that I don't remember seeing any all the way back to the postcards from when the restaurant was new, to having eaten there myself, that it said the name of the restaurant up on the facade.
I think there was a sign in the parking lot that said Crown Restaurant that was off to the side.
Sorry, I almost called you Commissioner Haywood. Ex-Commissioner Haywood.
I do. I mean, I would. You know, we do view Los Tapatios as a partner, right? You know, we do know that they messed up. You know, the revenue that they provide is an important funding source for us at the shelter. You know, so I would, you know, I think as Commissioner Buckham said, I understand the desire. I wouldn't want to see potential mitigation measures be used to punish their misdeeds. They are being punished you know, by being here already, by the mistake that they've made. You know, they haven't been able to open their restaurant, so they've lost out on significant income because of that. You know, so I mean, I think I would ask to say, you know, can you review it in terms of, does it meet the requirements for the mitigation, and try to set aside the action that we're staff have done, because I am too. And then I would, you know, to the point of, is it always going to be a Los Tapatios? Yeah, maybe not, but obviously if it's not, then the sign comes down, right? If they left, we would take the sign down, that portion of it. And then I suppose further as well, like, right, they do have a right to put signage up for their business. So if it didn't go there, it would have a site at a location to be determined. Thanks, guys.
I guess my response to that is that if the mitigation is we're not going to try to recreate it exactly, but to mimic it in some way, then the title of the restaurant was not in neon, it just said restaurant. So just having restaurant is more consistent than how it was originally.
Yeah, I don't view this as like revenge or punishment, but rather this is, without the Los Tapatios, is how it looked before. And so now we're adding additional things to it that doesn't necessarily mitigate the fact that the sign was removed. It would be more in keeping with the way that the historic building looked to just have it say restaurant with the name of the restaurant placed elsewhere on the building. And also, like, if they hadn't taken the sign down, would they have been coming to us asking for approval to put a neon Los Tapatios part on that part of the building? And maybe, I mean, that's a what if question we can't really answer, but I don't know that, like, it wouldn't have fit with that kind of sign. So this seems more like a new kind of sign rather than a return to what it would have looked like for me.
If we do want the Los Tapatios part to be somewhere else, so the restaurant sign does look more original, do we have to tell them where to put it? Is that something we need to discuss?
No, and it would need to be reviewed to meet our sign code requirements regardless. So I would not go there and just in that you may suggest something that is not possible to meet our current sign code requirements. So, I mean, the options mentioned are options. I would note to your point, Chair Dale, I don't think that even if we just went with restaurant, I don't know that there's a way in perpetuity to prevent anyone else from adding their restaurant name up there in the future. This is, no longer an eligible property. We won't be reviewing future changes to it in that way. So that is another consideration, is it might still be possible. And other things to consider, could be trying to differentiate it more, making sure that it they are two distinct signs and it would be possible to remove one and not the other, or possibly maybe, asking that the restaurant, the Los Tapatios name not be illuminated. And so that at night, just the neon one stands out. So other types of things like that to consider. But just wanted to make that note that it unfortunately isn't, no matter what, isn't going to be a permanent solution for this property.
I apologize for not remembering from the previous discussion, but could the scale of restaurant be returned to what it was before?
No, unfortunately not. And as you can kind of see here, and I can make it bigger, that 20% buffer that's around the outside, it has to stay within that. So we can't because it is essentially a new sign. Well, it is literally a new sign, but we can't recreate what was there originally. So that is not an option. And even if at Los Tapatios was removed, restaurant can't be any bigger than it is, because it's the height that's really narrowing it here, not the width. And same with the other side. They're slightly different but.
So, Lauren, I think you said that it is now not eligible, but that was a recommendation, not a decision. Who gets to decide if it's not eligible anymore?
If you accept the report, then it is final. That's the decision. And then that would affect moving forward.
So basically, if people destroy historic integrity, they can, going forward, do anything they want with the building.
And our process, if it had been followed and put in place to begin with, and we've been asked for permission, for the removal, we would have said no for that reason if we had done a study beforehand. And so this is, of course, not the ideal scenario, that it's an after the fact. But I mean, and generally, yes, if there are alterations and integrity is diminished to the point that it can't be restored.
It can't be restored because of the sign code. It can be restored.
Well, it still wouldn't be original, and putting a replica up there gets into another murky area of reconstructing something that isn't original and, passing it off as an original feature. So there's also that as well. And all of the other, it's the cumulative effect of all the things that Josh mentioned that have happened over time as well. And Sarah, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I did when this first came up as a code compliance case, which was right before Lauren started. I did consult with SHPO and ask if restoration was possible at this point, and they confirmed it is not. They would, even the state would not have considered restoring the neon or providing a non-original but replicated restaurant sign as restoring the integrity. So that was an informal consultation that we did as well. Because we were hopeful that maybe that was fundable or maybe that was possible. But we did not get any positive sign. I checked that, by the way, both with SHPO and the National Trust, because I was looking to see if funding was available. So I feel that that's pretty conclusive at this point, even though it's communication outside the report.
So, I mean, it's to anyone's advantage, in my observation or opinion, that if it were still the original restaurant sign that, and being bigger than what's allowed now, it would be more visible, it would be more interesting, and it would probably bring more customers. Gone. That ship has sailed. Could mitigation be that they have to fund the cost of educating business owners with potentially significant properties on what the code says, that they can't do that kind of illegal activity that affects, actually, they may not realize it at the time, that could diminish the value of their property. So could that be what we require for mitigation?
That sounds very vague and hard to put like a price, or you'd have to put like a price or a timeline on it. Or like you must hold 7, and that just seems like something that would take us 9 years to agree on to do. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying it might not be within the scope of what we have the power to do or decide, or like, do we want them to make a brochure or hold meetings, or?
I would agree. We would need to be much more specific to be something that we could, both enforce and monitor and approve, for those reasons. And of course, it's hard to know who exactly is going to be the person who's going to violate the code.
But if people don't know what the code is and the value of historic, then the odds of them someone else doing this unintentionally go up. That's my thinking, is that really we want to stop this kind of activity. There's no point in punishing people, but if we can make it so that more people the education part that's in our mission as the commission, to try and keep people from doing this, because there is value in having a significant property, whether you're a restaurant and it brings in customers, or the value of your building is higher because you actually have this cool, fun character to it. So I don't want to see things disappearing one property after another. I've seen enough of that already. That's why I'm sitting here.
I have one question. Was there a demolition permit issued for any of this? Is
No.
it required?
All of this was unpermitted, and was reported by the building owner to the city. And so future permits at this time for their work and their certificate of occupancy are all pending, on meeting our heritage preservation requirements, because it was unpermitted.
My next question was, who took it down? Was it a sign company? Or was it two guys in the truck? And the reason I ask that, because we have sign code enforcement, we have code enforcement, we have all this stuff going on. That was a big sign. And where is it? The recycled street across the tracks. I mean, it's too bad. It really is too bad that we lost a part of history that we'll never see again. I used to plow snow for the city of Flagstaff at 3:00 in the morning. And the only place that was open at 3:00 in the morning was the Crown Railroad with that big red sign. I seen a lady die in that parking lot, had a heart attack. Again, Duffy, like you were saying, it was a traveler at 3:00 in the morning going across town on Route 66. So to me, it's sort of a shame that we lost that. And I'm just trying to see, is there a way that we can safeguard that? It's always nice to plead mercy, but that part of our history is gone. It's never to be replaced.
Commissioner Dominguez, you were not here for the first conversation on the commission yet, but we did in fact send Kevin Dunlap from Code Compliance. He voluntarily went out to look for the sign at the landfill. He went to the metal recycler to see if it had ended up there. It was not a sign that was taken down professionally. Building safety had concerns if anyone had gotten electrocuted because removing neon is very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. We're glad everyone was safe. At least was safe enough that they weren't injured. But we did take extraordinary steps because we do value this. I mean, I don't know if you saw that last week there was a New York Times article about the value of diners across Route 66, and a photo of this building before it was damaged was on the front page of the culture section of the New York Times. It was that important as a building. We really did take every step that the city could. We had voluntarily had staff go out looking for the sign because we knew we couldn't restore it unless we actually had pieces of the sign to work with. So we really we recognized the huge loss. We made really strong efforts. Education is an issue. I mean, we're going to talk about that with every time we have someone do unpermitted work. You know, unpermitted work is something we talked about with the building official this week, and we said, can we maybe talk about how many permit issues do we have versus number of permits? It's a very small percentage. I mean, we have busy code compliance, we have busy inspectors, but we really do have, you know, overall very strong conformance. It's unfortunate that this is such a notable and significant loss on a cultural property. We only have what the code allows us to do in this case, which is that we can have a phase 1 cultural resource study with mitigation to major impacts. We've identified these are major impacts. The report agrees with that. So what is the mitigation that the commission wants? It needs to be tied to the major impact. So you've got to create like a rational connection in your statements about the mitigation between here's the impact and here is how I want it mitigated. You've already articulated that one of the conditions you may consider as part of accepting the report is not allowing the name of the restaurant or any other signage to appear with the word restaurant. That's a condition. Are there other conditions or other mitigation? Or do you want the applicant to come back next month with additional mitigation proposals, or to have maybe their consultant discuss those as part of this meeting? I think that's how we move forward from here now that we've kind of covered the ground of what we have done. It's just the condition we're in sometimes when we've had a compliance issue and issuing, I will tell you, it has been many years since we have issued code compliance letters that are violations of 1030/30, and we've had, you know, now 2 in 6 months. So we are meeting with the building official. It is being discussed at our development coordination meeting, which the building official and the planning director and the current planning manager and the front counter attend. There is follow-up about what's going on in our internal process or the website and how we can make it clearer that these requirements have costs when you do not, you know, follow them. You know, that is where we are. But the fact that there have been 2 in 6 months has led staff to go further into why 2 have happened when we had none for 5 years.
Commissioner Hayes, you have your hand up.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. One is there was talk of a mural. Where would that, as a proposal, as a mitigation, where would the mural be? Where are they proposing to put the mural?
So if you see to the left of that picture up there, that's where the restaurant entrance will be. It's kind of can't see it on the picture. It's just off the screen. You have another one?
Oh, I can't see it here. I just see you all.
So it would be, right inside the front door to the restaurant, there is a large wall that, you think that's like 12 feet wide? Something like that? Yeah, 12 feet wide maybe and full height inside the building, and then that's where the mural, right inside the entrance.
Does that mean
It's on the other side.
Are you moving the entrance?
Yeah, we are moving the entrance actually to reduce conflict with the housing portion. So it's that area there right next to that trailer.
Has that been the plan all along, to move the entrance?
Yes, that was part of the drawings that was submitted for the building permit for the hotel renovation.
And at that time, it was eligible for listing on the National Register, and that wasn't seen as an adverse effect to change the entrance?
You know, that's a really good question. I mean, I think, you know, like Josh said, I think it was, we never got far enough down the route to confirm whether it was eligible or not. You know, we started that process with Josh because we were looking at whether we wanted to pursue the historic tax credits for the property as part of one of the funding sources for the shelter. You know, the project became so complicated, and I think it was uncertain whether we would be able to get those, that we decided not to go further down that route. So we never got to the point of determining whether that changed eligibility. We did do, because the building falls under the period of significance, we did submit the original plans for review when Mark was here. And Sarah, I don't remember if we got a certificate of no effect or what the result of that was. There was nothing. We didn't have to do a phase one.
Mark did not require a letter report
Yeah.
for the initial work.
Yeah.
That was mostly on the hotel. But I don't know if I don't know how far along the restaurant permitting actually was at that time. So I'm not sure, because there was some things that were also part of the permitting that needed to continue to work on in the last few months. So I'm not sure if the entrance was part of that or not.
Yeah,
I haven't looked back at it.
Yeah, so the interior, so let's go away. The interior work of the restaurant was a separate permit, but the movement of the entrance was always part of that initial plan, because we did want to try and achieve, the clients at the affordable housing project are a relatively high risk and sensitive group, so we did want to be able to move the kind of remove the two parties from each other as much as possible.
So another question then. So I maybe I misunderstood. I thought in Josh's report that in 2023, at least informally, Bill Collins concurred that the property was eligible for listing on the National Register, and therefore would be treated as eligible until actually sort of proved otherwise.
Yeah, so that report, right, if we pursued the tax credit process, phase one of that process is submitting the determination of eligibility to the National Park Service, and we never got that far, so they never made that determination. So I think it's up in the air, right? I mean, we had one study of all of the properties that said it wasn't eligible. We had one that said it was eligible. Our consultant said it was eligible, which obviously at the time we were in favor of because we wanted to get the tax credits. So, I can't say one way or another, whether it was or not.
So I think that requires to be clarified then through the SHPO.
Do you mind if I chime in?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
I think there's a little misunderstanding there. I wasn't aware that they were changing the entrance to the restaurant until we started talking about additional mitigation a couple weeks ago. And I didn't evaluate it because of that, but at the same time, there's already an entrance there. They're not talking about adding another hole into the building. There's already a door on that side. So there wouldn't actually be any physical changes to the building.
Okay, that is different.
Yeah.
So one other thing is that if we wait to look at possible proposals for mitigations, I personally would like to see have the SHPO have an opportunity to weigh in on whether they think that this adverse effect has made the property ineligible. I think having that clarification would be nice. So is that something, Josh, that you would do on behalf of your client? Is submit it, because you have to submit something for the National Register record as it is to Bill Collins.
We do not. There isn't a nexus for that. It's not listed, so nothing needs to go to SHPO. And Josh has already informally talked with them and informed them of the finding. So there is no nexus in our process at the city level, as this is a city project. There's no state or federal involvement that would require us, apart from Josh's informal discussion with SHPO, a formal process to do that to move forward.
Yeah, because it's not currently listed.
Correct.
So it's not like it's losing its listing status. It's
Correct.
just no longer eligible.
Yes.
Potentially.
Is there anything specific from the SHPO you're hoping to get? Other than what Josh has already been in touch with them about, Commissioner?
Yes,
Haynes?
I did like follow up with the fact that from what the communication that's in the report is that Bill Collins agreed that it was eligible. So that sounds like it's eligible. And it seems like that at this
Yes.
point in time, since communication happened before, that then the
No.
SHPO should be brought in.
And Josh did clarify he has since the changes and since this project gone back to SHPO and talked with them about the eligibility and has informed them. So in 2025, in addition to the 2023 communication with Bill Collins, Josh mentioned that he has also since talked to Susan Lawson about the current findings. So I believe in terms of informal communication, that has already taken place.
And so
Thank you.
just to clarify, so with the city process, if we accept this cultural resource study, then that is effectively saying it's not eligible. Like we can make that determination without SHPO concurrence.
Correct,
For-
just
for a
like any
city
other
project?
city project across
Okay.
the board.
Okay.
Every letter report that you look at or I look at and every other phase one, yes.
Correct. That's part of our agreement with SHPO is that this commission has the authority and Lauren have the authority to make those calls at the local level when they are not affecting things that are already listed at the state and national level. And we still have, even if they're listed state and nationally, we're exercising that authority locally as both a body and an HPO. So we have informally consulted with SHPO, which is our only obligation.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yes, thank you. It's a little different than my day job.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to the educational mitigation because clearly none of us are happy about this. I mean, there's no way we'll get the main sign back, which it was definitely part of the significance. But what if the mitigation was to provide to the city the cost of creating the same, just one, because it will be expensive, of those signs, the value of that sign, and that is used to create a brochure that is given to every property that is, we could limit it to Route 66, that has significance or the potential for significance, and they sign that it was received so that they understand there is a process, they understand the property has value. We could also include, maybe Ariana could come back who works for SHPO and talk about the value of historic properties and maybe, and if that doesn't spend it all, we could do that every 2 years because property owners change. I just feel like this is a loss. It's a loss of our history. It shows that you can get away with it, and then they don't have to follow any of the requirements for protecting historic properties. And it's a major loss to this city, whether people realize it right now or may never realize it, but we chip away at our history, you know, it's gone.
Aren't they already subjected to fines? Or some other?
Yes. And in this case, you know, in addition, part of that is that they are being, you know, as I mentioned before, they aren't able to open their business until this is taken care of. And I do think there is no requirement that you could place on other property owners, such as forcing them to attend a training or forcing them to acknowledge receipt of something. So I don't think that could be part of it. And I would also, of course, this is on my and Sarah's behalf, caution you against recommending something that places most of the burden on city staff, which, and if effectively that would do. And Sarah, I mean, I don't know what our requirements would be in terms of accepting funding that we would have to monitor through a city fund to do something of that nature.
We have no mechanism or fee that we could do that with. I mean, if, you know, there are fee schedules and there are violation sections of the zoning code. That is entirely different. We have in the past asked people to produce brochures or to produce, you know, booklets about the building, about the thing that was impacted. We have never asked them to create something that would, I think if we're discussing this with legal in an e-session, I would struggle to understand how we could make a rational nexus between the impact and the mitigation. We have to keep that pretty closely tied. I don't have legal here to offer you an e-session tonight. I would worry about that. I would have to take the conditions to legal afterwards, I think, but it would be, I would struggle with that because you're basically taking something that's really education on behalf of the historic preservation program is a city thing. And we have requested in many budget cycles money to be able to produce brochures and to do these things. And we've estimated the costs and the city council has chosen not to fund that. So because there are a lot of competing budget priorities and it's hard. Like our brochure is the most effective way to share this information. Should we be doing other kinds of outreach? You know, should Lauren be going and doing presentations? We do those all the time. We present to realtors, we present to the Downtown Business Association, we do internal trainings, but those are really obligations of staff. And we do them with the funding and resources we have available to the extent we can. I know this is a very regrettable situation, but I encourage you to tailor the mitigation to the impacts. That is what the code says. It says mitigation of the major impacts. Other things outside of that you don't have a strong nexus to, I think we would struggle to make enforceable.
And to Sarah's point, I think a tangible physical product is something that is easier for us to require and follow up with, that the conditions have been met, such as in this case, something like that, you know, in order to allow them to move forward with opening their business and closing out the permitting requirements, having a tangible product like the sign or the mural that can be installed, we can visit, we can sign off. I think something like that is a solution that is a little more cut and dry. Or even if it was producing a brochure versus funding and outreach would be harder to track.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure all the mitigation we have requested in the past have been interpretive signs of some sort, something on the property that reflects what was lost as a result of
and in this case, I believe all of the applicant and Josh Edwards, the consultant, have also, the ones proposed, I think, are what they feel would do that best. And in some cases, there could be, you know, a brochure that would really talk about the history of the property. And in this case, there isn't, you know, a ton about, you know, the sign or the restaurant, and even, you know, like I think the mural and the sign would achieve more than a plaque in terms of public benefit. And Commissioner Hayes also has her hand up online.
Just a quick question. So they're not able to open because they have to have a mitigation agreed upon. Is that it? That will be able to, I mean, we don't want to hold them up forever,
yeah,
because that literally can be very financially burdening.
And their process has been held up since this violation was reported. And so they have been moving forward with some of the work, but won't be able to finalize everything until we've made tonight's decision or made a decision tonight or in the future. And then tailor how we're going to wrap up the permitting side of this based on the decision tonight.
So to that end, let's go back to the discussion of the two mitigations that they have offered. And then if we are unsatisfied with that, we can get to other potential options. So any other comments about the sign? Any consensus on, I think the one concern has been the placement of Los Tapatíos. I think the idea of making, if they want their name up there, having it be non-neon might be a more acceptable, because as Commissioner Dominguez has pointed out, like one of the things is at night, like the restaurant part of it sort of stands out. Commission.
I think they should be able to light up the name of their business, because night is when a lot of people are looking for their restaurant.
That's fair.
It's a loss. I mean, there's nothing that's going to make up for it with the signs, because the sign code won't allow a big sign like it used to be for that style of and that era. So I think it's just a loss. There's not much we can do. And I'm not big on a mural because it's easily painted over. I would rather have a metal sign that's inside the building, so it's less likely to get damaged, that tells the history of the building and shows the big sign and all those wonderful qualities that made it what it is. And that would be my preference.
Commissioner Buckham.
Okay, two things. So the restaurant and the Los Tapatíos are separate neon signs, correct?
And only the restaurant would be neon as proposed. The other one is like backlit internally.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, that's right.
So
Okay,
it would still be illuminated, but it would not be neon.
Okay.
okay. But it would be separate, so it could be taken down at some point. Restaurant, some ownership, whatever changes, but the restaurant sign will always stay unaffected, correct?
I mean, I would say yes, because they're different types of lettering. It should be put up there in such a way, and you could add that as a condition just to double check that that Los Tapatíos could be removed and restaurant remain, and a future name be added if it was to change. Unfortunately, I don't think we can require in perpetuity that the restaurant signs stay up there, and as things may happen in the future. But
So I'm assuming that we also can't ensure that the mural will stay up and not be painted over as well.
We also couldn't ensure that a car wouldn't drive into a metal sign, or that a drunk kid tries to steal the sign. I mean, no mitigations we make are ever going to
No,
be guaranteed to be
they're not.
permanent forever.
True.
But I mean, ideally, hopefully people would enjoy seeing the mural and it would entice the company to keep it in there.
I do like the mural, so I vote yes on the mural personally.
I would put the metal sign inside.
Could drive a car into a building, Duffy. Do you not remember Alpine Pizza downtown?
I know, just to be clear, the mural would be inside the building, not outside.
Is there any plans to have text along with the mural? Is it going to say like the Crown Motel in 1960s? It might be nice to have like a little corner of it that says like the sign was removed in 1992. Just,
Yeah, no,
nothing
and I think,
big, but
I think that actually given the postcard that we're super fortunate to have of the original sign, the dimensions of that, I guess, right, would only fill up a portion of that wall, so there would definitely be space underneath. But yeah, when we discussed this with Josh, and he and he had sort of a list of potential mitigation measures, I was I'm a person who stops and reads historic plaques, right? But most people don't. So we, the idea of the mural and being able to, replicate, at least, I mean, we're going to replicate that postcard in a way that is going to be much more visible, right, than it ever would have been otherwise. You know, we had plans to put the actual postcards up in the lobby of the Crown itself, and we have framed pictures of them up there as well. But you know, being able to get it in there, get it in the front door, so that you know every single person who visits that restaurant will now, you know, see that mural, and yeah, see a piece of history that isn't there anymore, unfortunately.
So would there be space for like a historical plaque next to the mural?
Yeah.
Is that something that would be amenable to you? Or you would be amenable to? Like,
Always depends, the devil's in the details.
well,
but, you know,
yes.
something that's more easier to last, that is more likely to last than a mural.
I know that downtown, you know how they have those placards on the buildings, and I don't know how, if this is practical at all, to put a placard on the outside of this building as well as the mural on the inside. Is that something that you guys toyed with as options, potential options for this mitigation?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's something that you know, that we considered and is obviously possible, right? Because other people have done it elsewhere. You know, we thought that the mural was more impactful. To be honest, that's why we suggested that.
But I know we were discussing, you know, down the road, possibly that mural could be painted over, but if you had a placard established on the outside of the building itself, then maybe you would have a better chance of at least that part of history, you know, the oral version outside. I mean, that I would like to see more than just the mural, maybe two forms of mitigation for me
That's
personally.
one. Yeah.
I mean, it's not really a walk. I don't see a ton of people walking around that part of 66 compared to like downtown. So that's why I was suggesting like you have the mural. David says that it doesn't take up the whole wall. So then you could have a plaque with the text information that would go on one of those. And then so everyone's waiting for their table and they can sit and they can read the sign and they can look at the mural. And so you might get more people looking at it than if it's, and also considering the construction of the building, you've got stone and then window. I'm not quite sure where it would go on the outside of the building. So I think some sort of more permanent metal or some sort of text plaque alongside the mural.
Yeah, I think you're right. Somewhere at the entrance or with the mural. But as long as you had both of those, I think I wouldn't say satisfied, but it would be acceptable for me to do that.
Yeah. No mitigation is satisfactory. But that's why it's mitigation. Yeah.
All right, so it sounds like we're good with the sign as it has been presented to us. Does that seem correct? I mean, assuming part of mitigation is not build the time machine and go not take the sign down. Mural with some sort of text plaque detailing the history of the building. And I think Josh has provided a great resource for distilling down what might be most important to include on that. Anything, I think the idea of creating some sort of educational program is not within the scope of mitigation or this thing. And I think as Commission said, that basically you're telling a restaurant to pay people to do work that is outside of the scope of their work and putting more burden on Commission staff, that it sounds like they're already doing in a way that we can't actually monetize with the way the government is structured, correct? So any other things people would like to see? Commissioner Horn?
I guess I have a question. If we can break this out into multiple motions, because I may not support every aspect of this and might like to vote against part of it.
It does, the acceptance of the report does have to be tied to acceptance of the mitigation. Is that what you're asking? If you could accept the report and not accept the mitigation?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. No, because part of the phase one is proposing and accepting mitigation. So that does need to be wrapped together into one motion.
I asked that as well. Is there any particular part of the mitigation that oh, sorry, Sarah, do you have a point of clarification?
Yeah, I can walk you through how it can be done. It has to be done as one motion, or at least has to be introduced as one motion. But once you introduce a motion, you can do two things. You could divide the motion. So if there is a part you don't want to vote on with the other, like say you have 3 conditions and you go, I want to vote on conditions 1 and 2 and vote on 3 separately. You can, while that, okay, so I have to walk you through the whole thing, I feel like, to explain it if that's something you want to understand how to do. All right, we can start with, someone's got to make a motion. It's got to include draft conditions. Someone has to second that. Someone may later make a motion to divide the question and say, well, I want to talk about 1 and 2 and 3 separately. And then that splits it in, as long as someone seconds that, or that creates 2 motions. The other scenario is you can amend the motion. So if someone introduces a motion with 3 conditions, then an amendment modifying the motion can be considered and seconded to add things, if that's where the discussion goes. So that's how you can approach it, but you cannot start with 2 motions. Once a motion to accept is on the table, you can only divide or amend it. Okay, thank you. I'm happy to raise my hand and interrupt if we're off course. I literally have the rules right in front of me for this conversation.
But as it sounds, you cannot accept the letter report, but not accept the mitigation, because the condition of the letter report for the cultural study is that you are approving, but you could approve one of the mitigations, but not the other ones. But you can't say, I accept the cultural report, but not the mitigations.
Correct.
Okay. Is there anything you were most concerned about, or?
I just still think it should just say restaurant on the side of the building. I don't think there should be a business name at all. So that's my objection.
Do you mean a business name anywhere on the building or in the same plane
In
as
the
the
s-
restaurant?
In the same plane as the restaurant in neon. Thank you for clarifying.
I can get behind that.
I agree
I
with that
also-
as well,
yeah.
because historically, there wasn't a name of the particular restaurant up there.
Yeah, it said restaurant, but it didn't say like Crown Motel restaurant, because they had another sign. And when it was the Railroad Cafe, it didn't say Railroad Cafe restaurant. So for like the entirety of the history, it just said restaurant. It didn't have the additional name of the
I think it was on the awning facing the street.
Yeah,
It
but
said
it wasn't
Railroad Cafe.
next to restaurant the way the Los Tapatios wants it to be. I think that's the point, that it's not mitigating the way the sign used to look, which is, I think, the whole point of mitigation. So I could also get behind that.
So can I make another comment?
Yes.
Okay, so first, Josh, you write a heck of a cultural resource study. You do a lot of research and it's very readable. And I really appreciate, because I like reading them. And I think they're important. I'm not trying to make more work for staff, but I don't ever want to see this again. I'm tired of losing our historic resources. And I just want to point out, and maybe we could make it part of our mitigation, that cultural resource study does not go on a shelf. Beyond a plaque if that happens, because in the city code 1030.30.050 number 4 process, it says when a cultural resource study has been accepted, it shall be offered for curation to the appropriate repository as directed by the Historic Preservation Officer or the State Historic Preservation Office, and in accordance with the standards set forth in, I have no idea what these are, 36 CFR 79.9 and 79.10. So I know I've been asking for this for a long time, but we require cultural resource studies. That is an asset that should be available to the public. It's in the code. And could we step up that effort to get them available to the public? That's part of the city mitigating this, is that we make this wonderful information that these people pay for to be put together, make it available to the public.
Commissioner Westheimer, you cannot make a mitigation for staff to do. I mean, I mean, you could ask that. I know we do follow the state museum approved curation requirements that the city clerk has got a signed version of, which say they're a permanent record, but they are housed at the city in a locked cabinet until they are requested for information or otherwise. And yes, we can get them out. That is a whole project, and we have discussed that separately, though we do not have staff or capacity at this time to take that off, nor is it our priority given that we are trying to chase down code violations and other major impacts to historic resources. It is not our priority at this time. So you can't make that a condition of this particular acceptance. I know it's something you want. I would love to have the capacity to do it. It doesn't exist right now. And that's that we have kept it on the list of there's always an unfunded list on every program that we do. It is just a big lift. It is not something that we will be able to do in the next year. You can keep it on the list, you can keep bringing it up, but you cannot make it a condition of this motion.
There's also the fact that many cultural resource studies contain sensitive material that should not be made public, and many tribes don't want them to be public. And so I think that you guys are doing a good job of following the law, and I would be concerned if you weren't. Yeah.
You can always redact that information that's sensitive. But I think that if we're going to require, and I understand it can't be part of this motion, but I'm just going to say, if we require people to spend the money on these, then they should not just be stored in a cabinet somewhere. It's very easy, relatively speaking, to make them available to the public.
Actually, if there's archaeological information in there, you can't disclose the location and character of an archaeological site without being at a Section 9 violation of ARPA's. So you have to be very careful with that. If it's archaeological sites.
Let's move on.
All right, so we've discussed sign replacement. It sounds like many of us would be in favor of not allowing the Los Tapatios on that part of the sign at this point, with it just being restaurant in neon as part of the mitigation to restore it to what it originally looked like before it was removed. That people are in favor of having a 1967 postcard mural in the entrance, the front entrance of the building, alongside some more permanent plaque detailing a history of the building that I would trust Josh and David or whoever else is in charge of this to pull together. I don't think we need to specify who does it.
I would note though, and if you could specify that I could review and approve that
Oh, okay.
without the design having to come back for another
So,
commission. Just
HPO
like
approval.
the one that we just looked at that Josh also just did for the Loy building downtown.
Okay. Any other mitigations that we are missing? We've done in the past. Is this acceptable mitigation for the loss of this resource?
I'm a little
could-
torn with the sign, just not, I understand and I agree with you. But at the same time, I'm a little torn because I know that some mitigation needs to happen, but I don't want to negatively impact this business's income, their livelihood, and I know they support the shelter. So I'm honestly torn, even though I agree with you, but then part of me wants to keep, I mean,
And
I guess I'm not saying they can't have their business name. They just aren't going to have it on that piece of the facade. I mean, no other restaurants that's been there has had the name of the restaurant in that part of the facade. They've had it elsewhere, somewhere else on the building. It just goes somewhere else on the building or in the parking lot. There's a sign in the parking lot. It's not that they can't have a sign. There's no business name on that piece of the facade.
Yeah, it can go on the awning. It can go on the building itself.
Yeah,
It can go underneath the part that says a restaurant. It can go in the windows.
It
I'm
could
not saying
go under
never
the
put your name on it. I mean, I
sign.
think there's a ton of space on that building. It sounds like they're going to be taking down the train mural, so it could go there. I think also Tapatios is,
it has to be facing the direction of traffic, right?
yes.
I mean, and maybe as a compromise, I could suggest that there has to be like a minimum separation between the two, so that it's, you know, Los Tapatios and then the restaurant sign to kind of replicate the original. I've just been sitting here thinking about, you know, if this was mine, how would I do it otherwise? You know,
Well-
and realistically, it would be putting up another pylon, you know, because they want to have it facing in both directions, right? So it would be putting up like another sign on a pylon like the one is there just on the other side of the building. And I don't know if that's a, you know, that in totality creates a superior result to having two signs separate but up on that triangular piece right there.
I guess I feel like that's not part of our discussion. If we're just talking about the mitigation of the impact, then that's kind of our scope for this. The
So,
sign,
so I was suggesting that the mitigation, instead of being that it not be allowed on that piece at all, would be that there would be a minimum separation between the two.
I believe we talked about this last time, but with the way that the R needs to be in that big arch, there's not enough space. For me, mitigation might be on this one facade we're seeing here, maybe the Tapatios, but I think most of the photos of the building are taken from the other direction where it says restaurant, so maybe the other side doesn't have it. Just, I don't know.
I think that's something that's feasible too, right? To the point about trying to have that on both sides, so both east and west traffic is able to see it. We could potentially have just the restaurant on, what is that, the east side of the building, and then they can have Los Tapatios below the crown, right? That you can see over here, where they could put it on that sign, and then on the western side, it has it as shown.
Because all the historic photos of the restaurant are all coming from this way, not the other way. So I think that is
'cause I guess-
more like the historic view of what that facade would have looked like is. So I'm not as bothered by the other side having those
It
Tapatios
also,
on it.
that is it. It's just a tab.
It opened it.
Right, that one is, yeah, so potentially that allows for it facing on this side, right, for this to be, no, that's as big as that, it wouldn't get bigger by moving it over. No, okay, that's what I was hoping.
Yeah, and my concern about this side too is that Los Tapatios is the first thing you see on this side versus the restaurant. And so if that side didn't have Los Tapatios, then the restaurant would like it used to look. Anyway, that would be a compromise I would be happy with. But I'm only one member of this commission.
I guess I don't know. I guess I'm thinking that we maybe would be best for us to have something that we all agree on instead of having to try to split it and do whatever Sarah said. But I'm also not trying to force opinions on other people.
Well, it sounds like we have two mitigations. We agree on the mural one. It's just the sign. So for the signs, it sounds like there's three options. There's this as it has been presented. There's just restaurant with Los Tapatios going wherever else they decide it goes, because that's outside the scope of this commission today and forevermore afterwards. There's plenty of space on the awnings, the way like previous restaurants has done, or to split the difference and have Los Tapatios restaurant on this facade and just the restaurant on the other facade.
I could get behind that.
I would be okay with that.
I will not be changing my opinion.
I'm okay with it.
I can't see the screens that were presented, so I only see you all. I don't see the presentation.
And I'm not sure why Commissioner Hayes, but we're looking at the proposed signage that is in the agenda packet. If you're able to look at the packet, I'm not sure why it's not sharing this screen, but the proposal that the majority appear to be in favor is on the east side of the building, just restaurant, and on the west and the east side of the building is also where the entrance to the hotel is, and then on the west side of the building having Los Tapatios and restaurant.
And that's where the entrance will be anyway, so.
Yes, correct, the new entrance.
That might read as more like, this is where you park for Tapatios, as opposed to people trying to park at the motel.
And I think that could set precedence in the future if you did have a restaurant change and you only had the Los Tapatios on the one side and then not on the other. And then that may stay over the years blank. But I do understand where you're coming from. I do see what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think too on the for the facade, if we're going to keep both, yeah, that the other side, if we're going to keep both, then we would want an amendment or an addendum that the signs need to be separable, that you can remove the business name while the restaurant is still there. Alicia, Commissioner Hayes, did that help at all?
Yes, and I did find the illustrations in the packet. I could agree with that, with having the Los Tapastillos is on like the west side, correct? And on the where the entrance would be, and then on the east side, it's just restaurant.
Correct.
I do like that they are separate so that the restaurant name can be removed and restaurant has to, it would hopefully stay.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, that if it just says restaurant, there might not be as much incentive for future people to take it off if, yeah. All right, so I'm not going to make a motion because I don't think I'm allowed to, but it sounds like we are moving towards, and you can disagree with me, and we can also just deny this, that we would approve the cultural resource study with the mitigation that one, the sign replacement as has been presented to us is approved, except that on the west side, the Tapatios is allowed, but is separable from the restaurant sign. And that the east side only says restaurant. And that we would require a mural of the 1967 postcard on the inside of the restaurant with a plaque detailing the history that will be subject to HPO approval.
Very well done.
Is that what we have been discussing for the past hour?
Yes.
And then we would want to then, after that motion, we would have discussion and make a separate the mitigations and vote on those separately. So Commissioner Horn's voice can be heard about the sign.
Yes.
Am I getting everything? Okay.
Now you need a second.
Am I allowed to make motions?
You are allowed to make motions, yes.
Damn it.
Would you like
I've
to
been
make the
lying to
motion?
everyone, so I didn't have to.
It's fine that you prefer as the chair not to make the motions, but you are definitely eligible to make motions.
And are we sure we got the west and the east sides correct? I am so bad at directions.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to say it as a motion now?
Okay. I will make a motion to approve the Phase 1 Cultural Resource Study of 3300 East Route 66 with the selection of measures to mitigate the major impact to the historic Crown Motel property. To wit, one, that the sign replacement as presented in the document here guide the signs with the condition that the west facade is allowed to say Tapatios, but must be separable and removable from the facade while leaving the restaurant sign, and that the east side facade only say restaurant. And second, that a mural of the 1967 postcard of the Crown Motel be placed on the inside of the restaurant's front door alongside a plaque detailing the history, subject to HPO approval.
I will second that motion.
All right, we will now have discussion on the motion. Commissioner Horn?
I move to divide the motion. I would like to vote on the mitigation measure separately.
So do we vote on three things? The approval of the report, and then the mitigation measure 1, and then mitigation measure 2?
Yes, you
Okay.
can divide it that way, as long as you're doing it all as a series.
Okay, can I get a second on Commissioner Horn's motion to separate the motion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all right. We will now vote first on the approval of the cultural resource study. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We will now vote on mitigation measure 1, the sign replacement mitigation. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? And on the second measure, the mural and plaque on the inside of the restaurant. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. It's the most complicated thing we've done. Bob's all around.
Excellent work.
Thanks, everyone. I think that was a really,
I do have one thing to see if city staff could do, and could there be a press release about this? And we don't have to like put a lot of blame on the tenant, but just to explain what happened and kind of what the process is, and that there's a loss of Flagstaff's history there.
that we're excited about the mural.
Yeah, we are excited about the mural.
We could request that. We can discuss it with the civic engagement staff. So I can bring that to their attention.
I make a comment. Next year is the 100th year anniversary of Route 66. So this would coincide. You guys can really make a big thing out of it if they want to.
All right, real quick check-in on our tabled item C. Any movement on that?
Yes, I believe. To go.
All right, thanks. Oh,
Tapatios.
yeah, thanks everyone from Los Tapatios and the Flagstaff Shelter for.
And Cornerstone.
Yeah,
and
thank you for all the
Cornerstone, yeah, for
information.
working with us on this.
Thank you.
All right. Do we need to move to untable this item?
No, you can just follow
Okay.
it up.
All right, we will now move back to item C, 416 West Birch Avenue. Nope, that's not it.
Item B.
It was
Grand-
B.
Grand
It was item B.
Did you ever
Yeah.
hear from?
614 West Santa
Santa
Fe.
And yes, Sarah has been corresponding with them. And do you want to summarize it? I didn't
Sure,
just
yeah.
read all of the things
Yeah.
you're working on.
I
over
was
there.
I was sitting here busily working. The property owner got held up at a work event and wasn't able to make it. So he apologizes. But he did say he and the contractor conferred and they said it would be acceptable to offer an extension for just $5,000 of the $20,000. They think they could get us $30,000 worth of receipts by mid-June. They just want some contingency in case there's spillover and they can't get the billing done all in time. So they were amenable to that. That would mean instead of it being $25,000 carried over to the next fiscal year, our balance would become 10, which would just be one grant if someone comes in May or June and has a project with a quick turnaround at the level 1 grant level. So they understood. They're sorry they weren't here, but they were working diligently while we were considering the cultural resource study to answer your question. And I do have their approval of that potential in writing that we will add to the file.
Great. Questions or comments on that?
Well, that's
So-
nice that it's not, the whole $20,000 that would be being paid out of for next fiscal year. It's only 5,000, so we're not letting that money be swept away.
I feel silly asking this question, but is this the English house? Okay.
Yes, England.
Lind house. Yes, thank you.
It is.
Always have to put the little man in the street in Google Maps. I'm like, which house is this? Oh, the one we've talked about 10 times.
And this one, I was like, what's happening? 416, 614. They're all the same this month. I would just make the motion if you do want to move forward with that. It's still both would be extensions because the deadline was this month. So it would be extending $15,000 to be completed by June 30th and $5,000 for a 6-month extension. So just splitting that out to notify that, yeah, the 15,000 be completed this fiscal year and a 6-month extension for the remaining 5,000.
All right, do we have a motion? Commissioner Horn?
I move to approve an extension for the $20,000 historic signs and facades grant for 614 West Santa Fe Avenue with 15,000 to be a extension to the end of June and the remaining 5,000 to be a 6-month extension.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
A second from Commissioner Hayes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Surprisingly, that was our longest item today. All right, we will now move on to general business with the historic signs and facades.
And there are no updates on this one from last month. Of course, we've made a couple updates in the meeting, so next month will look different. But for right now, there's no updates on the other projects. So still 15,000 remaining, which we awarded some of and moved some of tonight. So next month it'll be updated. But otherwise, no, the other projects are still permits issued or pending, haven't been finalized yet. But any questions on this one?
I have a question about the North LaRue. So there was a previous, and you acknowledged this in your report, that there was a previous plan that didn't go through. And my question.
We're not on that item yet. We're just wrapping up the grant tracking spreadsheet. So yes, we will go to that item next if there are no further comments on the grant.
I guess my question is, do we want to revisit the criteria for grants for next year? I don't have any questions about this, but do we want to revisit or keep them as they are? I mean, like just to put it on a future agenda?
Yeah,
to
we
discuss?
could add it to the May or June agenda to discuss the grant guidelines.
Okay.
I would note, there is one other correction. Really, it's not even a correction, just additional detail that we've been asked by City Finance Office to add as well, which is just making it extremely clear and most city grants that it is taxable. And it does already say it requires a W-9, so I think you could infer that, but I do need to update some of the language in the application and the guidelines to really make that clear that anything over $600 is a taxable grant, and you would be receiving a 1099-G from the city for it. So could be a good time to do all the updates at once. So I can add that to the May agenda if that sounds good for everyone.
Okay. All right. Other questions about the facades and grant signs update? All right, we will now move on to the reports. It sounds like all 4 of these are related, and that we'll be seeing a lot more of them in the future. So let's just stick to what these guys say.
One more. Let's not hope for a lot more. Yeah, so the first 2, 111 and 123 North LaRue, approval items A1 and 2 were both letter reports, which I attached, and as letter reports are subject to my approval and as HPO instead of needing commission approval unless I need to forward them for some reason. And both of these were deemed, not to have significance and integrity. And I'm sure especially the 111 is probably we're all very familiar with the changes over time to that property, the shoe hospital, but also additional changes to the former bank property at 123, and no particular significance identified through the letter report. So I concurred with the findings for both of those, that the 2 properties, were not significant cultural resources as defined by our code. And then the next step in that is that both properties, being not eligible or significant per our code, put in for certificate of no effects as they're in the downtown overlay and subject to the certificate process for work including demolition. They put in for demolition permits and a certificate attached to that. And as demolition, in this case, as they aren't significant properties or significant cultural resources, is subject to approval through a certificate of no effect, which is administrative. And I believe Commissioner Westrom, you were asking about the 111 North LaRue property, and Sarah can answer other questions that I may not know, but that one has come through before, as noted, for a certificate of appropriateness for demolition and a proposed new building, which the development did not go through, either the demolition or the development. And that, I believe, was before the building was 50 years old. So at that time, the HBO and the commission. deemed
Yeah,
it
and
appropriate.
that application was a combined application for both the demolition and the new building, which is why it was a certificate of appropriateness, is because you can put in for them separately. We have people put in for certificates and letter reports and then never demo the building, right? But in this case, they were both bringing you plans for, I think it was like a mixed use apartment building. And then there was a second set of plans for maintaining the shoe hospital with like an apartment tower on it. Yeah, this is starting to ring bells for people who've been around maybe. And that also didn't go through. And so those were appropriateness because they were regulating the design of a new building. But at this point, the property owners of
That
both.
hasn't come through yet. So
Yeah, that has
the-
not come true.
the
We do
future
not
notes,
have a
right.
plan for what will replace it. They have not applied. That will require a certificate of appropriateness.
And be subject to the design guidelines for the downtown overlay.
So my question, thank you for that background. My question is, based on that kind of history, are they proposing to demolish the properties before they have something approved by the city?
Yes, they are proposing to, which they can. There's nothing to stop them from applying for anyone, applying for a demo permit, and they are proposing. They put in permits to demolish the buildings, and then at a future date we will see. You all will see as well the concept plan for what would replace them.
Is that the same owner as who didn't follow or couldn't follow through whatever it was before? It is the same owner, so they.
No, I don't know for sure. It's a different, the hotel owner is different from a previous plan that came through the city years ago. That project has changed. And they are the ownership of 19 West Birch and 123 North LaRue. So I believe that's probably a different owner than a previous development. The shoe hospital may or may not be the same owner, but they are now working with this new development partner. And as you probably saw in the applications, they gave them like a written permission to demo and to apply on their behalf.
The reason, and maybe this will help clarify, the reason they were not able to proceed previously, we did follow up and ask why, what's happening, how come the project isn't moving forward, is actually it's very hard to stage the construction materials for what they wanted to do and maximize that small lot without having partnerships with nearby properties. And they couldn't at the time find somewhere to stage all the materials it takes to build a building. And they do at this point. They've considered refilling it with a tenant. They've considered, which did not go through. There was at one point we had like a brewery apply for that property, but they never came. They've tried to do the additions. They have tried many things. And I think at this point they've decided their building is no longer useful.
And as I'm sure you saw in the report, it's
starting to create a nuisance.
Well, and the inside's been gutted, like pretty much down to the cinders. So it would be unfortunately a massive task if a new tenant was to come in. But
And if I remember correctly, when they were proposing that, they were going to have to build the facade because that whole front of the building is collapsing. It's also not a very safe build. I forget exactly what it was, but it was this is not a sturdy structure. We have to completely retrofit it with a bunch of something, posts or something. Anyway, so.
But yeah, they're not proposing to remodel at this time, proposing to demo. And as I'm sure you noted, there will be, in addition to looking at the concept plans and a certificate of appropriateness for the new development, we also, my predecessor, Mark Rivas, and then I reiterated, asked for a phase 1 cultural resource study of the third property, 19 West Birch, and that has not been submitted yet, but that will, as a phase 1, will come to you for review as well. So to be continued on that project.
Or it could, or you could approve it as the HPO.
Not a phase one. Phase one, they all go to the commission. Yeah, yeah, and it's because as written, letter reports are basically when we anticipate it's not eligible, or doesn't have significance and integrity, or in the case of archaeology, that we don't think we're going to find anything, and that's why. Versus phase one requires a little more, and as we previously discussed, would also propose mitigation measures if required. So any other questions on this month's approvals?
All right, then let's, oh, did you have one?
I do have a question though.
Mhm.
So for the 416 West Birch, where they're actually going back to the previous, the design of the previous or possibly original chimney and
Mhm.
something on the back, why didn't you just approve those by consent?
I think in that case and in my interpretation, I mean, I agree. I don't care about the back, and if that was the only thing that had come forward, I think that would be a certificate of no effect, or actually even just exemptable on per our code. I do think, completely removing a major design element, in this case the chimney, because they're going to totally remove it and replace it, although it is appropriate. That to me rises to the level of a certificate of appropriateness. I also feel, because it's not the only thing that's part of this project, it's going back to everybody else who works in the 106 world, where I worked for a long time, looking at the cumulative effect of it. So this project has a certificate of appropriateness, so adding a scope of work, in my interpretation of the code, it's appropriate to modify that to include new additions. And so, yeah.
All right, we'll now move on to consultations. Any miscellaneous items?
And I added one here, and I wish I had more details, but I forwarded you all the information about the youth summit, and that they are looking for applications. And I got another one of those emails today, so it seems like they really are. So share with your networks of young people and teachers. But I have had a couple meetings now with the folks organizing the youth summit, and asking for participation. And I believe Commissioner Westheimer has also met with them in the Townsite LLC capacity. And they requested some level of Heritage Preservation Commission participation in the summit. And the plans are still very tentative. But they were kind of thinking it could be like a meet and greet type thing, where maybe a few members come and could answer questions from attendees, kind of talk about your experience with the commission and the code and that sort of thing. So wanted to gauge interest. The summit is taking place June 2nd through 5th, which is a Monday through Thursday. And unfortunately, their agenda is very loose. I tried to follow up yesterday to see if I could nail down specific time windows that they're talking about, and they don't have them for me. But they're probably going to be in Williams on Monday, and so they were thinking possibly Tuesday evening, Wednesday morning, Wednesday evening, or sometime Thursday, which is all subject to the timeline. So wanted to gauge your interest. If we have 3 or fewer commission members, then it doesn't meet a quorum, and we don't have to advertise it as a notice of quorum public meeting. So I think that would probably be the best approach. And I know many of you with your work schedules, certain times may or may not work for you. I know also probably the Wednesday night, I assume Commissioner Westheimer is doing a history talk. Oh, perfect. Okay. So Wednesday night, probably not a good time, but so do we have anybody, who's interested, or specific dates, times that you'd like to throw out there that I could follow up with them? Or I could also try and get more specifics and send it back out to you between now and.
I at least know that I think I'll be in Michigan then,
Okay.
so I don't think I'll be in town.
Okay.
I might be out of town as well, but there's a chance I may be in town and I won't be working. So I would be very interested
Okay.
if we don't leave around that time. So I think that would be, it seems pretty cool too. And I'm going to spread the word at my son's school as well. So
Please do.
I should be in town. It just will depend on the day and time and if I'm available.
Sure. Does anybody have preference for daytime versus after work time?
No, it really depends
Okay.
on the day.
Sounds good. They're doing a town hall at some undetermined time and location on Thursday. And so they were thinking that that could work. And if interested, you could also stay for the town hall. And Commissioner Westheimer, are you meeting with them separately to talk about? Okay, you also don't.
No idea when, and because of the quorum issue, I won't do what you're talking about because I'll
Sure.
get to meet them otherwise. So
Perfect.
that'll make,
Okay.
I don't know that quorum will be a problem. I will also be out of town running my field school, but if they're up near the Grand Canyon, they can come visit a can dump.
I don't think they are. I think they're talking about going to Petrified Forest.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm kidding. It sounds amazing. I'm just saying it's not my side. Anyway, so it sounds like at least 3 of us won't be able to make
Okay.
it. So
I'm going to put Commissioner Dominguez on the spot and see if he's available because I think your local knowledge is such a important voice on this commission that that would be nice to represent.
Put me on the spot. If I'm available, I'm more than happy to do it.
Well, I'll stay in touch with those of you who will most likely be in town then, and let you know. And Commissioner Hayes, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I'm pretty already overextended in June. I better not say
Okay,
I'm available
good.
for anything else.
thank you. Okay, well, I will stay in touch about that, and let you know. And
any other items to or from commission?
I'll just share another, yes, May Hicks Curtis House update, my monthly monthly update, which last week we actually lifted up the building and it slid it onto adjacent parcel, and it was and the house mover Garrett Denny, who Duffy knows well, did it, and it was it was pretty hilarious to watch because it took about 1 minute to slide over, but it is now off the developer's parcel. So, and into our staging area. And we are still working on actually getting the bill of sale and having it officially be city property. So we'll be doing a bigger, press release and everything once we've got things a little more secure and ducks in a row. But we also don't have a firm move date yet for the move to the MRF that we've been talking about. So I think we're about a month out. And there are some concerns which, as most of you probably know, that with the Butler Avenue construction project and coordination. So the House member was looking at one date, but a lot of internal things going on. We may have to push it back. So we'll see, but I will let you know when that is finalized. And I'm working on creating a project webpage where I can keep up-to-date information and post all of our cool photos and videos that we've taken so far, so that way we can get all of that out there.
so I got a call from Adrian Scaveland, who's now with KNAU. And I said to talk to you. Did he get you?
He did, yes.
Okay, good.
So yeah, and I'm trying to delicately balance the timing of things while it's not in totally in city hands yet and everything. But I told him I would love to talk to him, and maybe we can pick a date in the future when we've got things a little more ironed out and it's closer to being out of the staging area.
Are you doing the presentation at the AZ Preservation Conference?
I am, yes. Yes, that is me. I invited Josh Edwards from Cornerstone to come as well, but he's not able to. But he gave me, I think the presentation probably that they gave HPC. So I have a lot of their additional photos that didn't make it into the report and things, and then I'm gonna update all of that with everything that's happened from whenever that was 2022 to date in the last 3 years. So, and who knows, maybe too bad it won't be moved. probably before I'm giving that presentation. So that would be great, but we'll see.
All right, any other items to or from commission members? All right, then it is 6:36 on April 16th, 2025, and I declare this meeting of the Heritage Preservation Commission of Flagstaff over. See you next month.